Great. Well, thanks for joining us, guys, and big thanks to the guys over at Hainton for sorting this out. It's really good to actually be able to still do these things while we're in lockdown. So the guys over at Hainton do these events, as some of you may know, in physical worlds. If we can remember way back when we were allowed to do that. And you can rewatch the events over on YouTube, as you can see from the first slide here. So I encourage you to check out previous events and join them when you can, once we're allowed back out and once we can do these things remotely as well. So what I want to do is we're going to talk today about your D&I policy is missing step. So a bit of housekeeping before we start with this. Naturally, as we're remote, there might be questions as we go on. You can use the raise your hand feature to do that, but to keep things a little bit smoother and not to run over, it'd be good if there is a Q&A session right at the end, so you can either make a note of your question, put it in the comments and things like that, and they'll be sort of correlated at the end, and we can go through it. And then basically what we can do is this is also being streamed to YouTube. So if there are any questions at the end, they'll be recorded all in one place, so we can people can look back on those and get answers to the questions in the future. So that is that. So yeah, cool. Right. So what we'll do is we will dive in. So first of all, who am I? So my name is Ben Collingwood. I've sort of operated within the sort of 3 states of being of any recruitment person ever could do. So I started, as most of us did, within the world of agency. So I worked in a small boutique IT consultancy agency for 5 years, worked my way up to manager, and then came over to the light side, if you know what I mean by that, of internal. Sort of did that for around 18 months, and then I have started around 18 months ago into the consulting world. So you'll see, and probably being confused by the Artemis Works logo there. So that's my business, self-employed. So what I've been doing over the last 18 months is I've carved out a niche for myself, mostly within the tech world, of growing software engineering departments from scratch. But that's not only from a recruitment perspective, but also from a HR, organizational design, building the team management aspects of it, not me personally, but how the team is managed and things like that. L&D and things, and then eventually handing off those different processes to the L&D department, HR departments, and then ultimately recruitment departments, and then putting the nails in my own coffin, and then walking out of there. So that's what I've been doing over the last 18 months. I've done it across 2 main projects, and then a load of small, about 10 to 15 smaller one-day projects. So 2 main projects meaning that we have no engineers on site at all, to we now have 60 engineers, and product owners, BAs, all of that sort of stuff. And the other side being we just need this little bit of help with our recruitment process, so the assessment process and interview process, or anything like that. So that's how I so what's what I do, and that's my background in a little bit of detail. So what I want to do is start out with what I think's missing from the step that's missing from D&I talks, never mind D&I policies. And what I think's missing from D&I talks is, why is diversity and inclusion so great anyway? We talk about it as if, you know, oh, it's just great, and it's just great. And I believe that diversity and inclusion is an end in itself. It's a bit of a philosophical term, but what I mean by that is that I believe it's a bit of a bold statement that companies that have D&I policies make society a better place. And I mean by that is because, you know, and not to get too political about it, but we work in quite, you know, we're living in quite tribalized times right now. And I believe that working within an environment of people of various different cultures and different backgrounds helps in terms of, you know, to actually solve some of those problems. You know, you work with different people, you get a different perspective on life, and that helps you as an individual, but it also helps the businesses as well. That's very much a corporate social responsibility in its truest sense. It's the responsibility of business to improve society, like that. So that's my view. But you know, what happens is when you go into a business, I always ask a question around diversity and inclusion because it's something that I'm really passionate about. The question I ask is to, you know, hiring managers, business owners, directors, business leaders, all of that sort of stuff, is what is your thoughts towards D&I? And I get a number of different responses, and they're all overwhelmingly positive. I've never had naturally someone say anything negative. And those ones are, it's really important to our business, naturally. They want diverse teams and agree with my heartfelt feelings towards diversity and inclusion, and that they will support D&I driven initiatives. But then, naturally, we actually get into the nuts and bolts of the projects, and we you know, start to actually get going in terms of building out this team in terms of the strategy and how we're going to go about it, be it attraction strategy or assessment strategy and all of those sorts of things, and see what the requirements are. And what we don't get is any additional budget. And what we need additional budget for in order to build diverse teams is, you know, the simple one, which is around sponsorships for people coming from different countries. So available sponsorships if we can't find the skills locally, and open up that opportunity for targeted advertising campaigns to target, you know, various different areas and pockets of more diverse talent, and loads of other things that we might need, you know, additional budget for. The other thing that they won't give us poor recruiters is additional time to hire. So you see, you know, a more diverse team, but time to hire is slipping off. A lot of businesses, not all businesses, but a lot of businesses aren't willing to make that sacrifice. What they absolutely, in my experience anyway, will not do is wiggle on requirements. So I don't know about you guys if you've been in the recruitment, you know, leading recruitment teams, or, you know, being a recruiter yourself, or working in HR, or a team leader, or even yourself of one of the teams that's been recruited for. But I, on multiple occasions, have had the simultaneous conversation of, we want super diverse teams, safe. We want to sort of balance our gender dynamic within a team, which is a huge, you know, problem and challenge within tech recruitment, as you can imagine. But we're not willing to sacrifice on quality. So, you know, it's not a necessary thing, but it does make it a lot more easier. And naturally, the quality wins out over having the easy building a diverse team easily, should I say. So you can see here what we've got is what the Trinity. We've got money, time, and quality. We're not willing to sacrifice or invest any of them to get things, which is basically kryptonite for getting something done successfully. So what I started to do is just think as to doing, you know, 3 or 4 projects where I found this to be the case, and going, you know, there's a conflict here between the left side of this. So people are saying, and I genuinely believe that, you know, people were believing it and actually were telling the truth, that they thought that D&I was really important to the business. They wanted a diverse team, and they were willing to support D&I driven initiatives. But yeah, they weren't when it came down to brass tacks, willing to pay more money, spend more time, or wiggle on requirements. And I started to think, why is that? Why is it that people are doing that? So what I started to think about was, maybe it's because looking at it from a business owner's perspective, or looking at it from a manager's perspective, what they've been tasked to do comes down to a very short-term goal. They're looking to build a team. They're looking to, increase revenue for the business. They're looking to do it, and they're thinking, months, quarters, years, not, it's good for society. That more fluffy belief that I have that it's good for society. So what I needed to do is be able to talk in their terms and provide evidence for that, back it up with some facts. So I looked at loads of different ones, but I think the most succinct two articles and websites that are easy for you guys to get to are these two, which is one by McKinsey and one by Gartner. So a couple of quotes from these, and I'll sort of translate them into human speak. So companies in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns above their respective national industry medians. So essentially, companies that are in the top quarter of for racial and ethnic diversity are 35% more likely to have financial returns that are better than all of their competitors. So that's obviously very advantageous. Move on to the next one. Same thing for female gender diversity, but 15% more likely to have financial returns above their competitors within their industry, which is great as well. And finally, on this point, employee performance for between non-diverse and diverse organisations is 12%, with similar improvement in intent to stay factors, which is really important. So we come back to that later. So we've got the first two there. So basically, these guys, what did the McKinsey study studied 366 different businesses across, I think it was 3 English-speaking countries: the US, UK, New Zealand, I think it was. But put me on that. You can go to the link and find out. And these are the findings that they found. So now what I'm armed with is the ability to go, instead of going, what's your thoughts on diversity and inclusion, saying, I've got a way that's proved by evidence that you can, or I can give you 35% more likelihood that you're going to outperform your rivals, or 15% more likelihood that you're going to outperform your rivals. I can give you 12% more performance from your teams. Naturally, that's great. And people are like, well, how do you do that? And it's build more diverse teams. But there is a cost associated with that, and that is your money, your time, and a little bit of wiggle in terms of your requirements. So that's why D&I is so great anyway. So what I want to do now is introduce you to 2 teams. Now, these are both teams that I've either worked in, real teams, or I've worked alongside with and been very, very close with. So there's Team A and Team B. Now, let's have a look at Team A, which is the most echoey of echo chambers, which is all white British, all university educated, all male, and all raised in the north of England. So we can't think of a more homogenous group of people. They are all pretty much like for like in terms of from a diversity perspective. Then we'll look at Team B, which was 40% Black, Asian, minority ethnic, 20% non-heterosexual, only 20% male, so large female contingent, but it's a little bit underbalanced in terms of the actual gender diversity there, but from all different levels of education, countries of origin, all of those sorts of things. So we look at these two teams, and what we expect from the information that we've got there is that team A would be lower performing and team B would be higher performing by 12%, maybe more, maybe less, but you know, there'd be higher performing teams would be team B. But in reality, what happened and what we observed is that team A was higher performing than team B. Now, we could have just dismissed this as just being a single point of data. You know, statistics doesn't work like this. You can't just take one team in isolation and look at it. But we saw, I did, across a number of different businesses, I saw this being repeated, not to this extreme, but this is to highlight this. This is the most extreme sort of difference. And by performing, managing that metric against, you know, disciplinary issues, the retention rates, quality of work, the work between two teams was very, very similar in terms of content, very different in terms of quality. So again, I was sort of thinking about, you know, what is this? Why is it? Because this is what I believe, given the facts that I've just outlined in terms of data, is that diversity, you have a diverse team, and that leads to your increased performance, right? So that's what seems to bear out. But then realized that the correlation doesn't equal causation. So there must be something missing. There must be some sort of middle factor within this step that is causing the increased performance within diverse teams. So what I did was I looked at a number of different studies, and the one that I think dealt with it as succinctly as possible, but if you actually read this study, you'll see it's not that succinct, is by Eli and Thomas in 2001. It's a meta study, so it's a study of a number of different studies around this sort of topic. And essentially what they found is they looked at a number of different businesses, both with different levels of diversity, similar to what I've just outlined there, with very homogenous groups, you know, non-diverse groups, very diverse groups, and they found they broke it down into the stages in there. And what they found was this chain, so the missing steps within here, which is diversity leads to diversity of thought. Diversity leads to ideas around positive change, which leads to change naturally, and then the positive change equals increased performance. So those are our missing steps. Those are the things that we're missing there. So let's outline what this means then. So we'll talk about the teams in a little bit more detail then. So from those two teams, what was missing? So it was around leadership that what I found and what was noted by the various different businesses and members of the teams. So team A had a leader that encouraged idea generation, team discussions, socializing, dealt with conflict openly, brainstormed problems and came to solutions. So that was team A. So that was our homogenous team, the team that was non-diverse. Team B, on the other hand, leadership made all the decisions and solved all the problems. Team leaders, so by leadership I mean the level above, so the actual managers, not the team leaders. So team leaders had very little power. Conflicts were dealt with under the table, so privately, but not, you know, not positively privately, negatively privately, saying basically be quiet. There was no transparency, so very much the people who were doing the roles, the team members, were very much in the dark about what was going on amongst the wider business and amongst the team at large. Team members were actively discouraged from solving problems and told to just go away and focus on your work. That's not your problem. You know, we'll deal with that. That's where what the team leaders and the well, not team leaders, leadership is paid to do, is to solve those problems. So what that means is our non-diverse team has fewer, and by these ideas for positive change, I mean these exist within the heads of the individuals. So these ideas are all sat within the heads of there. But quite a lot of them, say if we had a team of the same size, the teams were different sizes, but say if they were, the unique ideas that were in Team A were far fewer than the unique ideas within Team B, because they have more life experience, more background in different areas. So naturally they're going to have more ideas. But we take Team A's ideas and we take Team B's ideas, then Team A has a team leader represented by this funnel here. Please excuse my PowerPoint skills. It is a funnel, I promise. And what happens with those ones versus this team lead, this team leadership sort of structure, that has a very, very narrow funnel. So the ideas within the team on the left, Team A, pretty much all of them go through. You've got someone who encourages them to push them forward. You encourage them to solve problems, and they all get through. However, in Team B, very little gets through. You've got a team which is actively being discouraged from sharing their thoughts, their ideas, and their feelings. And that's, in my mind, and from my experience, what is missing is that ability to build collaborative teams and have collaborative leaders and be a collaborative team member as well. So great. So what do we do? What is it that we're trying to do? So as I say, we're trying to build collaborative teams. That's what we want. We're really wanting to build super collaborative teams. So what do we need to do? How can we do that? How can we unlock the potential of our diverse teams? So we build this beautiful diverse team. We've got the potential to unlock that 12% more, that 35% to 40% if you have both strong ethnic diversity and strong gender diversity. You've got the ability to unlock that increased profit from these great ideas that people have got. How do we do that? So number one is not only for team leaders. Now this is going to sound like it is, but there's a number of points here that team members can follow as well, and I really encourage them to do. So when I was doing the project with DMW, which was my most recent project, building those teams, this is something that they did naturally, and it's something that I realized very early. The team leadership and the business leadership were amazing at doing. They did it really well, which is to decouple the ownership of a problem and ownership of the solution. So about this, I've been a team leader and I've received a business problem. Now let's use an example. The business problem was poor cash flow for the business. So we needed to change the way that we did something within the business to increase cash flow within that business. So what I did was I went away and put on my team leadership hat. Thought about it for a little bit, went away, and then went back to the team and went, great, right guys, we've got a problem with cash flow. So this is how we're going to solve that problem. So I coupled the ownership of the problem, which is me, with ownership of the solution, which is me. So what you want to do is decouple that. So actually go, we have this problem. Team, how are we going to solve it? The team solves the problem. You're just a conduit for communicating the problem. And you as a team member as well, communicate that. So as I said, as a team team member, it's your job to also to challenge potential solutions, to try and uncouple that you own the problem, you own the solution. So yeah, that's point one. Move away from praising and rewarding those who come up with solutions and reward the team as a whole. So this is a really difficult one to implement, and one that I've struggled to implement across teams before. But what this means is that quite a lot of the time, what we do is we reward people that wear capes, so the heroes of the team. So if they've come up with that solution, we go, well done, great, they're looking really, really good, which is great, and it seems to be really positive, particularly for that person who wears that cape. But what it also does, I've done loads of informal sort of interviews with people that are team members across loads of different teams, particularly within the tech world. And what that does is it makes people who are less sort of out there of willing to speak up shrink further into the background. So what you're doing there is they've got ideas in their head that are not being released, they're not being looked into. So remove ego from the equation. Now this goes in hand with what we've just talked about, so decoupling the ownership of that, and remove praise and rewarding people, but actually rewarding the team themselves. If you go as part of this, I want to be the one that solves this, you're making a mistake. The idea is that you want to remove yourself from this. So this is probably the most important one, removing capes from it. So, and if you are interested in finding out further on this, this is, it's going to be a pretty short talk in terms of what's missing on this. I highly encourage you to read this book, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Now, this is potentially the most difficult to read book that I've ever read, not because it's poorly written, it's very, very well written, but because it really challenges you to look at your motivations for doing things. And the central premise of the book, and not spoiling it because it's well worth a read, is that you should take the ego out of any situation that occurs. What you're trying to do is you're trying to build things and grow, and it's really important for collaborative team building that is what your team leaders have and your team members have as well. And the second thing I highly encourage you to do, if you're not a big reader, is Lorna Davis's TED Talk, Guide to Collaborative Leadership. Lorna's great. I've seen a couple of talks that she's done. Her TED Talk is probably the most succinct version of it. It's very, very good, and gives you whistle-stop tour in terms of how to, not only as a team leader but also as a team member, keep this idea of no heroes culture, checking your cape at the door, building collaborative teams where we rise and fall together, is the main point on this. Right. So, point 2. So this is important as well, and it sort of builds on what we've talked about just now. Silence doesn't equal consensus. By this, quiet, people not disagreeing with you does not mean that people don't disagree. Just because someone doesn't say that they don't agree doesn't mean they agree, which is a very bad parlor way of wording it. You get my point. We've all been team members, well, at least I think we all have, where someone has come in with a coupled problem solution, and they've gone, right guys, we've got this problem and here's what we're going to do about it. Right, off you go and do it. I'd say probably 80% of the time I just go away and do it. I have done, you know, when I worked in teams. Right, yeah, fine, no worries, I'll go and do it. Not only did I not disagree, I didn't even think about challenging that was the correct solution to the problem. Sometimes it doesn't even come coupled. Sometimes it just comes as right, well, this is what we need to do now, and we don't know the problem that is being solved by doing that. So what that means is that people are being silent but not agreeing, particularly within, you know, the tech world that I keep on mentioning. You know, there's quite a lot of introverted members of the team. So just because they're quiet doesn't mean that they agree. And if they're being quiet, you're not going into their heads and pulling out those ideas, which will again increase your profitability based on your competitors, and, you know, increase your team performance. So you need to make sure that you're not taking people's silence for agreement. Now, this sounds like it's just the team leader's responsibility, and the burden for them is just on the team. For this is just on the team leader. It's not. Team members have a responsibility, excuse me, to speak up as well, to ask questions around what problem we're looking to solve here, not in a confrontational kind of way, but, you know, what problem we're trying to solve here, and saying if you don't agree in a constructive kind of way, because what we're trying to do is aim to make a culture that encourages the quietest teammate to contribute. So think about that. Think about how you can build a culture which encourages the quietest person to speak. Now, what you're probably imagining is a team meeting. You're all sat there around in a team meeting. There's loads of people, usually the people that always speak are speaking, particularly for large teams. If it's like a multiple team meeting, there's people that are the most common people to speak always. You know, I'll admit it, I'm one of those people that likes to speak and ask questions and get answers to things. But there's always the people, you know, the vast majority of people that stay silent. So what can you do in order to get them to come out? And the main thing, that's a really simple technique that you know, was used at DAZN and used in DMW, is change the structures of your decision making and the structure of your team to support that. So a practical example of this is you know, we've done step one, we've decoupled the problem and solution. So now we talk about problems, and then as a group we talk about how to solve them. But then group settings might not be great for, you know, how getting those more quieter people to interact and engage and, you know, and come forward with things. So maybe break out into one-to-ones as part of your regular one-to-one meetings, or grab you know, who you know are your more quiet members and go, you know, what cooler talk, what's your thoughts to that, you know, what is it that you think to that honestly. And then you might be able to get more information out of people and get a different perspective from them. And that's not only team leader as well, that can be team members. If you see someone who's the more quiet person not speaking up, ask them what thoughts are. You know, is that a person that's, you know, being quiet but has some really good ideas? And find out what that is, and then let people know, let people who can make those decisions know that there's other ideas that haven't been considered. Encourage disagreement and constructive conflict. Now, this is what we've been talking about before. You know, disagreement, agreement, encouraging that is, you know, super important, and it's, you know, it's critical that it is done in a constructive way. Now, a number of different people have done loads of different stuff with you know, constructive disagreement and constructive conflict. The first step is, as I say, is there's the top one, which is making sure that people are comfortable in terms of disagreeing. And by disagreement and conflict, I don't mean shouting at each other and you know, saying, oh, I disagree and I you know, I'm not listening to you until you agree with me. That's, you know, unconstructive conflicts and unconstructive disagreement. So trying to foster a team and a culture where people feel comfortable putting their hand up and saying, I disagree with it. And there's been loads of techniques to do this. Netflix do, I don't know if they still do, but I know they certainly did do a thing where they, if two people, usually in the senior management realm, disagreed, what they do is and they vehemently disagreed, and they hadn't come to a solution yet, they would make the opposite person argue from that person's point of view in public on a stream, on actually being a streaming company, to all people who wanted to attend, to be a public debate on the different points of view, but each person was debating from the opposite point of view, so their opponent's point of view. I think that's an amazing idea because it ticks loads of boxes for me. First of all, what you're doing is you are getting someone else to look at someone else's point of view, because they have to argue from their point of view. Secondly, you're encouraging for the wider business all of that. So you see these two leaders, constructively disagreeing, and you're encouraging that to be filtered down and cascaded throughout the business, which I think is just an amazing idea. Whoever came up with that idea shouldn't be praised. It should be the team that came up with the idea that should be praised, going against my own advice. So great. So what now again? So be uncomfortable with being comfortable. Now, what do I mean by this? So I'm going to tell you another book to read. It's on Audible, or you can just take my word for it. It's one of the best books in terms of this subject that I've certainly read. Matthew Seed's Rebel Ideas. It's great. One of the main points that he makes in this is that homogeneous teams are more confident in making their decisions and answers. Basically, what I can't remember what the name of the study was, but two scientists, social scientists and business what's called psychologists, did a study where they basically give two different types of teams of various different levels of diversity a task which basically was a team task where they had to work out the solution to a problem, and there was multiple different scenarios. Some of them were doing things quickly to complete this before a set amount of time. Some of them were coming to the right answer of a complex problem, and they did it different problems with all these different teams, and they found that homogeneous teams, teams that are non-diverse, our team A in terms of our example before, were more confident in their answers and their decisions and their answers. However, homogeneous teams were less likely to be correct, so they were more likely to be wrong in their answers, and to take more time in the speed ones, but come up with the wrong answer anyway. So that's our homogeneous teams. Diverse teams were less confident in their answers and decisions, but guess what's coming next, right? More likely to be correct. So you can see what's happening here. Basically, what we're encouraging, say if you followed all of my advice so far, you've checked your cape at the door, you've encouraged change your team structure in order to, and built teams that encourage disagreement, you've got your debates going, you've got your one-to-ones where you're encouraging different things, all of that sort of stuff. What you're going to feel is less confident in the decisions that you're making. And this makes sense sort of counterintuitively if you think about it, because you've got more input, you've got more different options, you've got more people coming at you and going, I disagree with that for these reasons, I disagree with that for these reasons, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. So you're increasing the options, which reduces confidence, because you're going, well, all of those sound like really, really good ideas. So you've got to, again, be uncomfortable with being comfortable. and get comfortable with being uncomfortable simultaneously, because you've got to try and make the decisions anyway and go, right, this seems like the best one. And remember, those decision making, so that problem solving is done as a team. So what is my central point? So my central point is that it's not good enough to build a diverse team. You've got to build teams. So the first step within any project that I do now where I'm building teams is make sure the structure of that team from the outset, even before I've hired the team leaders, managers, any of those sorts of things, is set up so that the team can be built like this, and recruit in terms of team leadership and team members based on these things. So, you know, are they comfortable with these sorts of concepts and bringing people out and that, so we can get the advantage, and we can, you know, spend the money, the time, and, you know, flex bill on in terms of, give that wiggle in terms of quality to some end, so to some aim, and unlock the potential of all the stuff. Cool. I think that's it. Time for a Q&A for the next 15 minutes.
Hey Ben, I've been listening.
Awesome,
I've been on mute. What I'll do is I'll just I'll put a question out via the chat just to see if we've got any questions. I'll do a quick check of YouTube to see if we've got any questions there as well, and I'll let you know if anything comes through. I have encouraged people to send them over to yourself, but if I get through any, I'll let you know as well. So bear with me 1 second.
Cool. So I've got one here from Jessica Hart. She asked, let me have a look. What are your top tips for recruiting a diverse team? So the first point is, as I've just said, building the actual team structure and the attitude of the team, which is really, really important towards being able to unlock that potential. So that's the first thing, because if you don't do that, there's just no point. Don't bother recruiting a diverse team, because you're not be able to get the advantage out of them. The second one is do it early in terms of that. So, and what I mean by that is look, I keep on coming back to the tech world, but any type of specialist sort of recruitment, and by specialist I mean financial, tech, HR, anything with a degree of speciality to it, is build them yourself, so grow them yourself. Is the one that is what I'd say is your main way of recruiting diverse talent. And it doesn't sound like recruiting diverse talent. So what I mean by practical terms is one of the things I've done in a couple of times now within the tech world is hire apprentices as our juniors. So previously what we used to do is just hire grads. So that lower level layer of our software engineering teams was grads. So we'd do grad fairs, and we'd do you know, all the usual things advertised on Milk Round and all of those things. And then one year we did both. I did both. So I did the Milk Round thing and all that sort of stuff, and then went to a bootcamp academy for tech hires, which is basically people join a course for 3 months, and they usually pay for it. And some of the courses, coordination that I used is apprentices, so they're paid for by the government. It's a 3-month course, and they come out and they can develop. And then we measured performance against grads, so general performance in terms of team fit, all of that sort of stuff, versus apprentices. So bear in mind, these grads have done 3 to 4 years in university. Superstar, meant to be superstar developers, are asking for a lot of money because they've done development, and our apprentices outperform them. That have been doing you know, just 3 months worth of intensive recruitment training. And the reason why that's relevant to diversity and inclusion is that we found that there was a far more diverse pool of people within the apprenticeship worlds than there was within the grad world. We found that people, came from, various different ages, different backgrounds, had, great level of professional responsibility and professional attainment in a different industry. There were different sexes, races, all of those sorts of things. And that's where we brought people in. And it's a real challenge, I'm not going to lie, in terms of recruiting people from different backgrounds and things like that, particularly within tech. I mean, 7% of engineers in the north are female, and that's, we've got to try and attract those 7%. So that's that one. Right, so do you have any resources about the differences in culture and conflict management? And that's from Lift Lessons. I'm not sure I understand completely what you mean. So culture and conflict management. The Rebel Ideas book is probably really, really good for that, in terms of particularly within building cultures and conflict management. If you're interested in another book about the Netflix thing that I mentioned, I think it came in around that time, so I'm assuming that that's what you were talking about. Patty McCord's book, which is, if you search Patty McCord, I can't remember the exact name of her book, but she does. She's the one who built the Netflix's cultural deck, and if you haven't seen that, look it up. It's an amazing document about Netflix's culture, and they're doing some pretty intimate things within the world of HR. And her book basically outlines the creation of that and some of the main points, and it's well worth a read. And it's on Audible, so yeah, you can listen to it. Cool. Annie, do you think D&I has gone on the back burner in terms of priority in the tech industry because of COVID-19? Difficult to say, really. It's a bit early days in terms of it. I think in my sort of world, recruitment seems to have pretty much gone on standstill. So it's difficult to say, and I wouldn't want to go, oh, it's definitely going to be like this one way, or definitely going to be like this another way, because we're just not sure until we've seen more data post lockdown ending. So yeah. Cool. Any final questions before I let all of you go? Cool. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great to speak to you. As I said, if I go back to my thing to try to follow my own advice, I can't do it. But my the website's artemis.works for those, so you can get in touch with me via there. If you have got any questions or something occurs to you that you want to ask me, feel free to do so. That's what I'm here to do. Thanks again for the guys over at Hint and for organising it. This is great, and I hope to speak to you all and see you all in person when we're allowed to leave the house.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciated to do the talk. What I'll do is I'll make sure I circulate your contact details with everyone in the morning. So if you want to send everything to me, I'll circulate with everyone so they can get in touch with you directly.
Perfect. Cheers for that. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. No worries. Thanks, Ben.